Welcome back to Football Daily, where today we're talking about some free agents. That's right, in just over a month, a host of top players' contracts at their current clubs will come to an end. So I thought today it would be the perfect time to place 20 of the most interesting names I've selected at different Premier League clubs. Now, some names are going to be missing from here. There are going to be free agents not included in this list. Some for obvious reasons, i.e. Mahmoud Dahoud, who's already going to Brighton. Skriniar, we already know he's going to PSG. Kroos signing a contract. Benzema signing a contract. There's a few players I've left out. De Gea signing a contract. These guys, down the bottom here in this free agent section, their future is very much still up in the air. I also think they're interesting talking points as well. Some of the players that are free agents are quite frankly boring. Let's start with the big one though, who still isn't boring, is he? Lionel Messi. Even at 35 years old, he's putting up over 15 goals, 15 assists in one of Europe's top leagues, not the most elite league in Liga, and certainly there's been problems during his tenure at PSG, most notably recently the trip to Saudi Arabia, but you're still getting one of the best players in the world on a free transfer, potentially. Now, it seems very likely he's going to go to Saudi Arabia. It would have been very easy for me not to include Messi on this list, but the reason I wanted to include him was to place him at Manchester City. I know that this would be ridiculous, and it's not going to happen, but I just want to see, for a small time anyway, Lionel Messi play his trade in the Premier League, and I think the only club that's going to happen at is Manchester City. I still think that's extremely unlikely because I don't feel like he's got the off-the-ball work rate to work in that team under Pep Guardiola, even though his on-the-ball quality is so exceptional. But there is still that mystique about Messi in the Premier League. I would love to see it. I don't see it happening at any other club. The only way this happens is if Pep Guardiola opens up his phone, calls Lionel Messi, and Man City decides an absurd amount of money on him. Could he work on that right-hand side? Obviously, yes. They would find a way of making it work. And even though it would be at one of the most bitter rivals for United, I would just love to see Messi in the Premier League, even for a short stint. Next up, we've got Marcus Thuram, who is one of the most highly prized free agents on the market going into this summer. Of that, there's very little doubt. This is the player who's put up 13 goals, 10 assists in the Bundesliga. He's really found his home as a number 9 now in that Mönchengladbach side. Was very highly thought of when he came out of France, and he's really hit full gear just as his contract's come to an end in Germany. He's going to be an awful lot of suit. This is a player who's putting up 0.8 non-penalty expected goals and assists per 90. Newcastle are going to be very interested in him. I think he'd be a really nice fit there. I'm going to suggest seriously rogue, and something that's definitely not going to happen because he's going to have suitors in European competitions. I'd love to see him at Brentford. Obviously, it's not going to happen, but with Ivan Toney banned for 8 months, they are going to need a number 9. Thuram is physical enough, but he's also great on the ball, works back to goal, can run the channels for you, also operate off the left if needs be. That'd be a banging signing, wouldn't it, for Brentford? Imagine that as a statement of intent. It's not going to happen, but I just think it's a fun one. Wolves' Adama Traore, also going to be available on a free contract. It doesn't look like there's going to be any sort of agreement found there, and it's no wonder. If you look across the last 3 seasons, 4 starts, 10 starts, 11 starts in the Premier League, it's really not enough minutes for him. So he's going to be looking for a new destination, and he's still an extremely decisive player, at least in ball progression. He's not decisive in the final third in terms of assists or goal scoring. But if you need a player to get from point A to point B in a counter-attacking side, Adama Traore is still one of the best players in the world at doing that. I don't think he's ever going to have a career at the top sides, but I'm going to suggest him for a team like Nottingham Forest, who have been very counter-attacking in recent weeks. Their best work has been done via players like Morgan Gibbs-White, Brennan Johnson, who can counter-attack quickly, even Danilo in recent weeks. I think Adama Traore would add another dimension to that side. He'd be able to attack as part of a front three. He could also fill in at wing-back. We've seen Steve Cooper operate with a back 3 recently, and Serge Aurier as a wing-back. Adama Traore offers cover in both of those roles. Again, I'm not sure Forest would be able to get him, but I think he would be a great asset to have a team that is battling relegation, as we've seen over the last few years for Wolves. Wolves obviously gone in a different direction. They control the ball a lot more via their midfield now, but a little bit like when Alan Saint-Maximin was at Newcastle, when Newcastle were pushing up the table. I think Adama Traore could add a different function to that Forest side. It'd be an exciting signing. Do I see it happening? Probably not. I can see him going abroad now, Adama. Arsenal look like they're going to lose Reece Nelson. And Dicker, of course, the Frankfurt centre-back, left-footed centre-back as well. Hard to find him on the market. Is going to be available this coming summer. I think Tottenham Hotspur should be all over this one. They needed a left-sided, left-footed centre-back for so long. And Ndicka fits the bill. He's 6'2", so super physical, wins a huge amount of aerial duels, but he's also really, really progressive with his ball carrying. He's able to play as a back three or a back four. He's even operated, I think, in parts in 2021 as a left back. It's unlikely that's going to happen. I see him more as a left-sided centre-back in a back three, which is exactly what Tottenham operate with. Surely they're going to finally sign someone long-term for that left-sided centre-back role. Longley really hasn't worked out. Ben Davies is still doing a job there. And Dicker on a free, to me, feels like a total no-brainer, given he's only 23 years old. There's only upside to this transfer. There's no real risk. Adrien Rabiot also going to be available this summer on a free. I think this is a tap-in, a really obvious shout for Manchester United, who, of course, had a £12 million deal agreed with Juventus last summer. Erik ten Hag, very much a fan of Adrien Rabiot, and it's clear to see why. He's had an exceptional season this year at Juventus, probably unexpectedly to many, because there was a bit of a drop-off occurring in his career. A real remontada this season, a great World Cup, and he would be a driving force alongside a player like Casemiro. As we can see, he's an extremely well-rounded midfielder. He's been one of Juventus' best players this season, a great ball carrier, very, very good in one-on-one situations, but also has quite a lot of defensive work rate, which is something that Manchester United miss when Christian Eriksen plays in that position. Interestingly, though, Manchester United also linked to Mason Mount over the last 24 hours, heavily linked to Mason Mount. He's a very different type of midfielder. I wonder, are they trying to do both? The controller of Rabiot, the chance creator and transition expert of Mason Mount. I think that's clearly an area Manchester United want to upgrade. I wouldn't be surprised to see at least one of the current crop leave and potentially two arrive. Let's go to Yuri Tielemans. I don't think there's much point discussing because we also talked about him in the relegation special I did last week. If you haven't watched that already, please do go and check that out. Of course, I suggested him for Liverpool and I suggested him for Manchester United at 26 years old. This, again, to me, feels like a no-brainer. I'm really surprised that more clubs aren't interested in him. I've seen him heavily linked to Roma this week. If that was the case, I mean, they could have agreed a pre-contract with him 6 months ago, but it didn't happen. Solid numbers, had a really bad season, but again, I think he would be a decent asset for pretty much any club in the Premier League. If not a starter, definitely a squad player. Next up, let's go to Daichi Kamada, who I'm surprised hasn't got a club lined up officially yet, in the same way a player like the Hood has. Kamada is a really unique type of midfielder. He can link the midfield to the attack, but he also arrives in the box perfectly. I think it's 9 goals this season. A great, great ball carrier. For me, Tottenham Hotspur could do an awful lot worse. I think they miss a player who creates chances from deep, arrives late in the box and can support the front line. I also think he'd be a good asset for Newcastle. You know, they're very interested in James Maddison, aren't they? And I think he would be a good asset for a club like Brighton, who are looking to break in to that elite bracket. I think Kamada's goals from midfield would really help them, and it's likely they're losing a player like Alexis McAllister. If Alexis McAllister goes for £80 million to Liverpool and you bring in Daichi Kamada for 0, I think that would be an incredible bit of business. Do I think that's going to happen? No, I think he's going to be dreaming of a Champions League club, and I think he's probably likely to get that from somewhere on the continent. I'm not convinced Daichi Kamada is going to be heading to the Prem. Wilfried Zaha. One answer here, Wilf. Just stay at Palace, man. You're already a bit of a club legend there. In fact, a club legend. They've offered you huge money, according to reports. £200,000 a week on a 4-year contract. Just take that. Take that. Become one of the biggest club legends in the history of Palace. You know, The other options are like going abroad to a Fenerbahce, or I just don't see anybody like Newcastle, one of the top 6 clubs, moving for him. I think he should stay at Palace. I really do. Ilkay Gundogan, the running merchant. I mean, let's be real. I would love to see him go to Arsenal. Do I think it's going to happen? No. I think he probably ends up staying at City or going to Barcelona. But this would be a huge statement of intent from Arsenal. We're taking Gundogan on a free transfer off Man City, who did want to extend the contract. We'll give him the 2 or 3 year contract that he wants. Yes, he's 32. His underlying numbers, still one of the best in the league. His performances by the eye test, still some of the best in the league. One of the best players in terms of clutch, crunch moments I've ever seen in the Premier League. 8 goals, 4 assists so far this season, to add to 8 goals, 4 assists last season. The season before that, I think he was Man City's top goal scorer. This guy, he has to go down as a potential Premier League great for me, Ilkay Gundogan. And I think he would be a massive addition to a club like Arsenal. If they could pull this off, wow. Next up, we've got Asensio. And I'm going straight in there. We've seen the rumours linking him to Aston Villa. This would be a statement of intent by Aston Villarreal under Unai Emery. And I think it'd be a good move for the player as well. 15 starts this season for Real Madrid, 15 goal involvements. I think he scored 10 goals last season. I don't think he's ever going to be the guy at Real Madrid, and he surely has accepted that. It's either play a bit part role at Real Madrid and continue to sign 1-2 year contract extensions, or go to a club like Aston Villa and be the guy. And I think he would be the guy at Aston Villa. You look at the players they've had to start wide recently because of Leon Bailey's continued injury problems. Coutinho's not really been there, has it? You know, Buendia can float as a 10 but doesn't really want to play in that wide role either. Ramsey's played out there at times. I think Asensio could play as a 10. He can play wide on both sides. He would immediately improve Aston Villa as a club, not only on the pitch but in terms of level and reputation. If Villa were to get Asensio, I think people will go, Jesus, like they are going for it. And I think he would be perfect for Unai Emery too. This is just an all-round good fit, I think. Whilst we're on the topic of good fits, I think Guerreiro to Man City makes an insane amount of sense. Look, they've got documented left-back issues. Cancelo's going to leave in the summer, of course. They want a player who can not only be a left-back, but also invert into that defensive midfield role, which is exactly what Rafa Guerreiro is so good at. The fact he's going on a free is mind-blowing. He's going to win the Bundesliga at Borussia Dortmund and say a farewell like that. Insane. He's still a good age as well. Was he 29? I think this is a no-brainer for Man City to go out and say, yes, you might be a free agent. Yes, there might be more glamorous options on the market. But what we need from our left-back is exactly what you can deliver. His underlying numbers are crazy. When you watch him, he's unbelievable. He's a natural leader. This makes so much sense. And when I was talking about his underlying numbers being crazy, I feel like I'll just leave this here. Have you ever seen a more Manchester City fullback than that? Look how unreal he is on the ball. He's attempting 70 passes a game from that inverted fullback position. I just think Rafa Guerreiro would be so good at Man City. He would be a scary, scary player there. Let's go to Moussa Dembele. Lyon's Moussa Dembele, who's not had a good season at all. He has just not had a good season whatsoever. 800 minutes in Ligue 1, and he's really been usurped by Lacazette in that number 9 role. Lacazette, of course, absolutely destroying Ligue 1, which is not a ringing endorsement for when Dembele scored 21 in 25. Last season, that was, of course. But I still think there are options for him in the Premier League. You know, Crystal Palace have well-documented number 9 issues, as do Wolves. I think both of these teams he would start for. And I think both of these teams, he would be an improvement on their current number 9 situation. I think he's better than Odsonne Edouard, definitely better than Mateta. And at Wolves, obviously Jimenez is leaving, Diego Costa probably going to leave. There are issues with Julian Lopetegui not getting the players and the funding that he wants. I think Dembele would be an easy win. He is a good goal scorer. If you can get in the ball in the box, he will score you goals. So I think this would be a fine fit for a free transfer. Whilst we're on the topic of Wolves, I think Dani Ceballos would be an amazing fit for that Wolves side. Losing Ruben Neves, losing João Moutinho, losing all of their passing range from deep. Get Dani Ceballos in. I mean, he didn't work at Arsenal, but his underlying numbers in terms of ball progression are absolutely off the charts. We're talking about a bloke who's putting up 12 progressive passes a game. That is an incredible amount. 90 passes on average at a 92% pass accuracy. A distributor from deep with okay defensive output. He's not going to be a beast, but you pair him with some of the other options they've got in there. Boubacar Traore, they've got Gomez in there. They've got Mateus in there who will have the legs around him to do the running that he can't do because he is not extremely athletic. Ceballos, but on the ball, he's exceptional. And they are losing exceptional levels of on-the-ball ability in Ruben Neves and João Moutinho. I think this is just a great fit. Do I think it's going to happen? No, I don't. I think he probably ends up going to a club in Europe, but this is the sort of deal that Wolves have been able to randomly pull off over the last few years because of their connections to Jorge Mendes. So never say never. Next up, we've got Ryan Kent, who's not really had a great 18 months, but I think he'd be an all right fit for maybe a club like Fulham. Actually, I'm going to put him at Fulham. Now, they've got a lot of wingers out of contract. Of course, Willian still hasn't signed that new contract as of recording on Thursday, the 25th of May at 6:15. If it happens between now and release time, shoot me. But he hasn't signed a new contract. He's got interest from across Europe and going back to Brazil. I would be surprised if he doesn't end up staying. Solomon also, I think, hasn't got a contract beyond 2023 as things stand, although I'd imagine that gets sorted. Dan James, of course, is on loan. I think Niskins Cabano out of contract too. I think he would not be amazing because he's had a bad 18 months, Ryan Kent, but it feels like he's had a bad 18 months because he has kind of not phoned it in at Rangers, but he's at that level where he's wanted to leave. And when he was at his best at Rangers, 2020, 2021, I think it was, when he put up 10 goals, 9 assists, there was a lot of hype around him. I'm interested to see what he does in the Premier League. Again, I'm not sure he'll get a Premier League move. It looks like some of the Turkish sides are very, very interested in him. But why not? Let's put him at Fulham for now. Okay, Stefan de Vrij, whatever. I'm going to suggest Tottenham Hotspur. I think he is 31. If Conte was there, I feel like this would be more of a Conte signing. But given the managerial show, I don't know who is going to be in charge and whether or not they're even going to want a 31-year-old centre-back. But look, Eric Dyer has played 30 Premier League games this season. I think De Vrij would be a better option at the heart of that back three, just like I think Ndicka would be a better option than their current crop at the left side of centre-back. It's 21 starts for an Inter Milan side that are going into a Champions League final and have third best defence in Serie A by expected goals against. He's been a large part of that. He's experienced. Yes, it wouldn't be a long-term strategy, but I think it would be an immediate upgrade on the defensive options. Angel Di Maria, who we all thought was going to sign like a contract extension at Juve, but it seems like it's not going to happen now. He is 35, but he's had a good season at Juventus. He simply has. Where do we suggest Angel Di Maria? Chelsea do not need an Angel Di Maria. There's no way he's going to Bournemouth. Do you know where I would love to see Angel Di Maria? At Newcastle. Again, it's not going to happen because they've gone in a totally different direction in terms of physical players that work extremely hard off the ball and haven't really targeted that sort of superstar player, even if he's aging like Di Maria. But my God, that'd be fun. It would be fun to see Di Maria have another crack at the Premier League. It's not going to happen in a million years, but even this season, he's been impressive for a crap Juventus side. This would be fun, but it's not going to happen. Next up, we've got Van den Boemen, of course, at Toulouse, the 27-year-old Dutch midfielder. I'm going to put him at Brighton, who are, of course, losing two central midfielders in Moises Caicedo and Alexis McAllister. Boemen can do a little bit of everything. He can play as the deep line playmaker, but he can also contribute on that front foot. He's extremely physical, great passing range. Anybody who watched the free agents draft we did on Sunday Vibes knows that Patrick Van Straten absolutely rates him. I think he'd be a nice fit. I don't think you'd have any problem getting him if you're Brighton, now that you've got Europa League football. I think you would rather be going there than a club like Werder Bremen, where he's currently linked Do I see this one happening? I think this is the sort of smart bit of business that Brighton have classically done. But he's 27. Brighton have targeted younger players in recent years, and I would imagine that continues. Naby Keita. Oh dear, 800 days injured at Liverpool. I think it's just 77 starts in 5 years. 60 million euros they paid for him as well. I don't feel like that's talked enough about Keita. It's not worked there. He's had so many injury problems over the years, just desperately unlucky. Because there have been moments where he's been impressive, and of course when he was at Leipzig, he was one of the most highly rated young central midfielders in world football. He's putting up close to 5 tackles and interceptions. He was driving and having some of the highest successful take-ons and progressive carry numbers across Europe for a young central midfielder. If I'm being honest, I don't see Naby Keita staying in the Premier League. But I want to hear from you guys. If he did, where would you put him on this screen? I'd suggest maybe somewhere like West Ham. We haven't got a West Ham suggestion yet. They're losing Declan Rice. He could offer thrust to the midfield and defensive cover, a little bit akin to Declan Rice. It would be a huge risk because of his injury history, 22 separate injuries, I think it is now. It's not going to happen. But again, it would be kind of fun to see. If he was to step away from Liverpool, could he revitalise his career? Because yes, he's not played an awful lot, but when the photos are on the wall of Liverpool lifting these bits of silverware, Naby Keita will be involved in pretty much all of them. So will Alex Oxlade-Chamberlain, who's played just 300 minutes of football this season, another player dogged by injuries over the last few years, and 29 now. The last clubs we've got, Chelsea just don't need any players, do they? And Bournemouth. I think Bournemouth is actually an alright suggestion. Send him back down to the South Coast. Of course, that's where he came up from, in the Southampton youth ranks. And you'd have to say it would be an alright fit. Bournemouth's midfield, you look at Philip Billing putting up huge amounts of minutes. I think it's 35 appearances. Lewis Cook, 28 appearances. Then it's Jefferson Lerma, who's got the most minutes of any player in the Bournemouth squad. And he's out of contract himself, probably leaving the club, heavily linked with a move to Crystal Palace. Now, he's much more of a defensive midfielder than Alex Oxlade-Chamberlain, but when Joe Rothwell's put up 20 appearances, Hamid Traore only arrived in January and is slightly more attacking, I think it would be an interesting move. It's not going to happen, but I don't know where else to suggest. Maybe he goes abroad, Alex Oxlade-Chamberlain. Maybe he's also a suggestion for West Ham, with them losing Declan Rice. I don't know. I'm lost. Help me. Where would you suggest Alex Oxlade-Chamberlain, the free transfer, goes in the summer? Let me know in the comments below. Okay, there we go. Some of the best free agents on the market placed at different Premier League clubs. Let me know what you thought in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video, hit the like button, hit subscribe. Thanks very much for watching, everybody. We'll see you later.